everyone, my name is Marta. I'm an IT recruiter in Qubit Labs. Today we want to talk about specifics of hiring process in Ukraine, or in other words, things you should know before hiring developers in our country. So answer a question that will help you to take your recruiting process to the next level. So let's start. Why do companies choose Ukraine as a destination for hiring developers? Ukraine is among the countries with the best programmers and developers, and then with an average proficiency score index more than 91% according to skill value. Moreover, when it comes to skill set variety, there is no country like Ukraine. However, Ukrainian origin doesn't automatically imply that a particular specialist is right for your project. If you want to hire Ukrainian developers, there are some specifics you should take into account. While IT recruitment is certainly a complex process and one influenced by a range of factors, there are also several useful recruitment related generalities that can help you to do your project planning time wise if you want to hire developers in Ukraine. Now, that you are aware of overview, let's begin with technologies. The recruitment cycle for an array of the more widespread programming technologies are generally shorter than those for older or less widespread technologies. In particular, as you can see, these more widespread technologies include Java, C#, JavaScript, PHP, and Python, being the most popular programming languages. Incidentally, it's relatively also easy to find good QA engineers or skilled project manager. In the same time, let's talk about the technologies that are more difficult to find and that are associated with longer recruitment process. Include C++, Golang, Ruby on Rails, and Node.js. You will also likely to spend a long period of time on finding a highly qualified DevOps engineer, Salesforce developer, or business analyst. The above happens because there is generally less demand for these kinds of experts on the part of Western and other overseas clients. Correspondingly, fewer developers and other IT professionals choose their technologies and areas as their specialties. However, if your IT partner specializes in such technology, there should be no problem for them in providing you with the expert you need because they offer in-house training or just have an affiliation with the corresponding local developer community. It should also be noted that the duration of the recruitment cycle can also be influenced by some requirements that are associated with the knowledge of a specific framework's library or business domain. The duration of a recruitment cycle can range from 4 to 9 weeks, but the duration also depends on the level of the candidate. We briefly spoke about technologies earlier, so let's look it in more depth now. Hiring a senior developer with good command of one of the more widespread technologies, for example, Java, will take roughly 5-7 weeks. As a rule, you can hire a middle Java software development engineer within 4 weeks. In the same way, hiring a junior Java developer should take you no more than 2-4 weeks. Finding a good Java architect would be an even tougher road to hoe if it would typically be possible to find one within roughly 8 weeks, provided you have sufficient budget. As I mentioned previously, the less popular technologies such as Ruby on Rails, C++, Golang, and Node.js usually require longer recruitment cycles. Such process could take up to 8-10 weeks. The second one we're talking about today is allocation and remote work. The largest city by the number of IT specialists is Kyiv, the country's capital. Hence, your candidate is likely to be a typical urban dweller with a corresponding set of values. In Kyiv, it will take about 40-60 minutes to get to work. Now, according to coronavirus pandemic, it's really important for developers to have the ability of working remotely rather than office-based work. Ukrainians welcome home offices and will be glad to be a part of remote-first culture. Moreover, many developers have rich experience working with freelance projects. Let's move to the next points. There are education, and English. Regardless of gender, your software developer candidate is 80% likely to be a university graduate. 56% of Ukrainian tech workers have been majoring in programming or STEM subjects. If we are talking about English proficiency, an average developer in Ukraine has an intermediate or upper intermediate command of English. You won't have to worry about miscommunication due to a language barrier, of course. You can expect developers or PMs to speak fluent English, but it takes longer to hire such specialists. So now we come to the next points, which are really important: interviews and feedback. Success of the hiring process is directly proportional to the client side. We mean that the number of stages of the interview, the test assignment and its size, the efficiency of communication with candidates, and so on play a huge role. I'd like to direct your attention to the presentation. We grouped points that recommended and not recommended to follow during hiring process, because taking your interview process too complex is another surefire way to scare off candidates. If you have, for example, 5 stages of the interview, be ready for even a longer researching process. 2-3 stages of the interview are usual for Ukrainian developers. The same situation is with the test assignment. 1-2 hours test. Okay, 1-2 weeks. You would probably lose a candidate, especially if the test isn't paid. Feedback is really important. If it takes too long to reply to an applicant or to reply after the interview process, it's more likely the candidate will have other opportunities and no longer be available, especially if the candidate is in high demand. So now I'd like to change direction and talk about why candidates turn down your job offer. I identify 7 main reasons. So, first, they are not happy with compensation and benefits. Maybe it was a competing offer that beat you out of the gate, or maybe it was that you wouldn't move on your salary budget and the candidate couldn't move down to your offer. High quality talents cost money. Starting someone off at a low salary, knowing you will eventually increase it by 5,000 is like building a foundation in mud. Make them an offer they can accept. Secondly, culture not a good fit. Gen S are more concerned about company's culture than other generations. As a leader of the company, it's your job to make sure that you provide an environment and culture that people want to work in. Also, we can't ignore that the job can't be not exactly what candidate thought it was. Sometimes, after learning more about the job, candidates realize that maybe it's not what they thought it was. It also could be that they are just not confident they can succeed at the position, feeling it might be above their skills or it's a little below what they are capable of. We just try not to take this to heart. They actually did us a big favor by pulling out of the race before we found out that they were a bad hire. Let's turn to the next issue, the allocation and remote work. As I already mentioned, the price of gas is soaring, and it seems like there is no end in sight. For this reason, commuting has become an even bigger factor in a candidate's decision making. The ability of working remotely increases chances not to be turned down with your job offer. Next point, why your job offer can be rejected is no work-life balance. This is an increasingly important factor in candidates determining taking a job, especially for Gen S, who really value work-life balance. Qubit Labs supports a healthy work-life balance, offering flexible work schedules and so on, but it also depends on you. For example, overtimes isn't the best thing to practice with. Next, negative online reviews. Before I buy almost anything online, I looked at the reviews. Candidates now do that with jobs. There are actually a few sites out there that let you review employers, just like you can check out restaurants and services on. Scary, right? Well, it shouldn't be. So, now come to the next point, which is the duration of the process. As I also mentioned, if you waited a long time to get in touch with candidates, or the whole process read way longer than it should have, it is super frustrating for them. If you take too long to hire them, they lose momentum and interest in your company, or they'll take a job elsewhere. Finally, the last point is you. Let's face it, everyone put their best face on in the interview, just like in the first date. If candidates have actual options to choose from in terms of role and compensation, and they had to wait half an hour before you connect to the interview, or if you appeared distracted or disinterested, or if you were rude, you just made their decision a lot easier. I've covered the points that I needed to present today, and we really hope that our advices will be useful for your business. I'd like to thank you for taking time to listen to my presentation.